I want to start this deep dive a little differently today.
Oh,
Usually we jump right into the data, the strategies, the how-tos of it all. But today I want to step into a specific feeling.
okay.
It's a feeling that, well, I think anyone who has ever tried to make something, a painting, a business plan, a novel, knows intimately. It's the silence.
Hmm.
The silence that settles in when you close the door to work. That moment when the world just falls away and you are left with nothing but a blank page.
It is a quiet topic, isn't it? But
Yeah.
it's a heavy one.
Yeah.
We are looking at a stack of sources today that don't just talk about the act of creating, but the cost of creating.
Exactly.
Specifically, we're looking at the solitude of the artist. And it's interesting because the popular image of the artist is so romanticized.
Right, the genius in the attic.
The genius in the attic, the brooding figure who just wants everyone to go away.
The trope is that the artist hates people. But what we have here, from the letters of Rilke to the psychology of Erich Fromm and books like Art and Fear and the War of Art, is a picture that is so much more nuanced.
It's not just about being physically alone.
No, it's about this very specific kind of tension. A tension between needing people and needing to, well, leave them.
Exactly. And that tension is really the core paradox of this entire discussion.
Hmm?
If we look at someone like Erich Fromm, he lays out this fundamental human truth.
Which is that our deepest need is to overcome separation.
Yes, we are terrified of being cut off from the herd.
He actually calls the awareness of human separation the source of all anxiety, right?
He does. He argues that our sanity, for most of us, depends on connection. We want to merge with others to feel safe. We want to be part of the we.
But, and this is the whole thing, to create anything of value, you have to voluntarily separate yourself.
You have to violate that fundamental need for safety.
You have to step away from the tribe.
Precisely. You have to enter what Rilke called the land of solitude. And what our sources suggest is that this isn't just a matter of, closing a door. It is a psychological departure.
One that triggers some very primal alarms in our brain.
It's not just quiet time. It's a kind of exile.
Let's unpack that, because the War of Art has such a great take on this tribal fear. It argues we are wired for the campfire, not the studio.
It does. It points out that for millions of years, safety meant being part of the group. If you were by the campfire, you were warm, you were fed, you were protected.
And if you stepped out of the campfire glow into the darkness.
You died. You were eaten. It was that simple. So when an artist sits down to write or paint, they are, in a way, stepping into that darkness alone.
So that resistance we all feel, that sudden urge to check email or do the laundry the second we sit down to work, that's not just procrastination.
I think the argument is that it's biological terror. It's the amygdala screaming, we don't know how to be alone. We don't know how to be free individuals, because our programming just screams that isolation equals death.
Wow. So sitting down to write a poem is, in a very primal sense, an act of risking your life.
Which explains why it feels so physically uncomfortable. You aren't just fighting distraction, you're fighting biology.
And I want to bring in Rilke here, because his letters describe this land of solitude in a way that is, well, it's intense.
He is the master of this geography, and he doesn't sugarcoat it at all.
No. He has this account of when he was living in a castle near Trieste trying to write. You'd think, oh, a castle by the sea, total silence, how peaceful. But it wasn't.
At all.
He wrote that a great sadness befell him. He described himself creeping about in the thickets of his life, screaming like a wild man and clapping his hands.
Clapping his hand. The detail always gets me. Just making noise to prove he was still there.
Exactly. He said you wouldn't believe what hair-raising creatures this solitude flush up.
And that is such a vital detail. We think of solitude as emptiness. But Rilke shows us that solitude is actually a confrontation.
When you remove the noise of the world, you aren't left with a blank space.
You are left with yourself. And as he implies, that flushes up demons. It forces you to look at the parts of yourself that society and constant distraction help you ignore.
So if the artist survives that initial confrontation, the screaming in the thickets, so to speak, what happens next?
Well, Rilke also talks about a shift in how we experience time once we settle into that solitude.
This is one of my favorite parts.
It's beautiful. He advises the young poet that to be an artist means not to calculate and count, to grow and ripen like a tree.
Ripen like a tree.
It's this profound shift.
Oh.
When you are deep in the work, mechanical time, the clock, the deadlines, the notifications, it all just dissolves.
You enter a state where, as he says, a year has no meaning and 10 years are nothing.
You are operating on organic time, not industrial time.
I love that image. But practically speaking, that creates a massive disconnect, doesn't it?
Oh, a massive disorientation.
You spend your day in tree time, deep in this slow, eternal state, and then you have to step back out into the world of rush hour traffic and dinner reservations.
It's like a form of jet lag, but for the soul. You are living in two different time zones simultaneously.
Mm.
And that really contributes to the loneliness. You come back to have dinner with your family, but part of you is still somewhere else.
You're there, but you're not there.
Exactly.
There is another layer to this loneliness that I found really compelling in Art and Fear. It's not just about the solitude of the room or the time. It's about the solitude of the gap.
Ah, yes. The gap between vision and execution. This is the secret pain of every creative person.
Right. They talk about the undisciplined imagination. When a book or a painting is just in your head, before you start, it's perfect. It's a masterpiece. It glows.
And the moment you actually start doing the work,
You ruin it.
you ruin it. You compromise it instantly.
Exactly.
They use the example of Moby Dick. Before Melville wrote a single word, that book could have been anything. It had the potential to be the greatest book ever written in 1,000 different ways.
Sure.
But the moment he wrote, Call Me Ishmael,
He eliminated every other possible book he could have written.
he committed to one specific path, which means he lost all the others.
That is such a heavy thought, that the act of creating is also an act of loss.
And this is where the loneliness becomes so specific. Art and Fear points out that the audience, you and I, the readers, the viewers, we only ever see the finished product. We see the masterpiece.
We don't see the dumb mistakes that were painted over. We don't see the scenes that were cut.
So we see the triumph.
But the artist sees the scar tissue.
Exactly. The artist is alone with the knowledge of how the finished work failed to match that perfect vision they had in their head. They are grieving the perfect version that never existed.
Well, everyone else is applauding the compromised version that actually exists. No wonder they feel misunderstood.
It creates a private struggle that literally no one else can see.
And speaking of being misunderstood, this brings us to a really painful concept from the artist's way, the shadow artist.
This one hit home for me, I have to say. It's about the vulnerability of identity.
The metaphor she uses is just heartbreaking, the invisible bone.
Right. She describes a child or an artist dragging home the invisible bone. You have achieved something internal, something creative, something that matters deeply to you. Maybe you wrote a poem.
Where you figured out a melody.
And you bring it to your family, your tribe, looking for approval. You drop the bone at their feet. But they can't see it.
Because it's not a grade or a paycheck or a soccer trophy, it's just art.
And when that bone is ignored, or worse, patronized, the artist learns a lesson. My true self is not welcome here.
So they hide it.
They hide it. It creates a split. You have the person you present to the world, and then you have the secret, creative self that you protect at all costs.
The War of Art touches on this too with what it calls the Dylan Lennon defense. I've always wondered why those guys were so incredibly sarcastic in interviews. I just thought they were arrogant.
But the argument is that it wasn't arrogance, it was protection. They knew that the part of them that wrote those songs, that channel to the divine, was not the person sitting in that chair answering silly questions.
The creative self is, in the book's words, too sacred, too precious, too fragile to be explained in a soundbite.
So they put up a wall of sarcasm to keep the boneheaded interrogators away from the source.
But think about what that does to a person. You are being admired by millions, yet you feel completely unknown.
You have to build a fortress around the best part of yourself just to keep it safe. That is a profound kind of isolation, to be seen by everyone, but known by no one.
It reminds me of another concept from the artist's way that plays into this, the virtue trap.
Ah, yes.
This idea that we are conditioned to be nice and available to the people we love, but art requires us to be unavailable.
This is the guilt of the artist. It is a very specific flavor of loneliness. To do deep work, you have to withdraw. You have to say no to your family, your friends, your social obligations.
And that withdrawal feels selfish. We want to be good people, but the artist often has to choose between being good to others and being true to the work.
So you're physically present at the dinner table, maybe, but mentally, you've gone to ground. You're hiding out in your own head.
And that is such a lonely place to be, sitting with people you love but feeling guilty because you're secretly thinking about a sentence structure or a color palette.
You are withholding yourself from them, and you know it.
Let's move to the other side of the process. We've talked about the loneliness of starting, the fear of the tribe, the work itself. But what about the silence after the work is done.
Mm. Art and Fear talks about this idea of completion as a moment of loss.
It connects back to what we said earlier about potential.
It does. When you finish a piece, you are done with it. You have expelled it. It's no longer yours.
Mhm.
But the world hasn't seen it yet. And there's often a delay, sometimes years, between when an artist finishes a work and when the public engages with it.
They mention a consistent delay of about 5 years for some photographers.
Right. So imagine this. You are receiving feedback today on who you were 5 years ago. But you, the artist, are currently living in a totally different headspace, working on something new.
You are never emotionally in sync with your audience. They are reacting to your past. You are living in your future.
Which creates an unbridgeable distance. You can't even really share the joy of the current work because no one else is there yet.
And there is a darker aspect to this completion phase, which is touched on in the source, the gift.
Right, the idea of the muse, that creativity is external. It quotes D.H. Lawrence, "Not I, but the wind that blows through me."
So if you believe that creativity is a gift, something that comes through you, not from you, then what happens when the wind stops blowing? You're just the channel, the vessel.
And when the work is done, the energy leaves. Many artists report a severe depression after finishing a major project. It's not just fatigue, it's the feeling of being abandoned by that creative force.
You were connected to something higher, something electric, and now you are just a person in a room again.
Wondering if the wind will ever come back.
That sounds incredibly bleak. It really paints the artist as this hollow vessel. But I want to pivot here because our sources don't just leave us in this pit of despair.
No, they don't.
They also offer a way to reframe this isolation. Is it possible that this loneliness isn't actually a flaw? That it's not something to be fixed?
That is the key question, isn't it? The War of Art has this wonderful moment where the author is asked, "Don't you get lonely sitting by yourself all day?" And he realizes, no, I wasn't alone. I was in the book. I was with myself.
So the solitude is actually a form of company.
Exactly. And Eric Fromm, who we started with, the one who warned us about the anxiety of separation, he comes back in here. He argues that creative activity is one of the only healthy ways to break the prison of aloneness.
How so?
When a carpenter works on wood or a painter on canvas, they are uniting themselves with the world. They aren't separated anymore. They're in a deep relationship with the material.
I love that. It's not isolation. It's a quiet dialogue. You're communicating with the thing you're making.
There's a beautiful image in one of the sources about Dutch still life paintings. You know, the 17th century paintings of flowers that are incredibly detailed.
Right, with the little drops of water and the insects.
The author describes a beetle, a snail, and a butterfly all sitting on these flowers. They don't know the others are there, really, but they're all there together in that frozen moment.
That is surprisingly comforting.
The idea is that the artist enters that still life. They are sitting there with the beetle and the snail in that suspended time. It's a community of attention.
And we can, I guess, operationalize this too. Julia Cameron suggests the artist state,
which is a deliberate practice of being alone. You take your inner artist, that creative child, out for an excursion, a walk, a visit to a strange antique shop, just playing.
And the rule is, no one else allowed.
No one else. Because you are trying to build a relationship with yourself. To the outside world, it looks like you are wandering around alone. But internally, you are hanging out with the most interesting part of your psyche.
You are nurturing that connection so that the silence doesn't feel empty anymore.
It feels full.
So what does this all mean for us? If you're out there and you're feeling this loneliness, this tension we've been talking about, do you try to cure it?
I don't think you can cure it. And I don't think you should. Rilke would say it is a geography you have to traverse. It's the price of admission.
If you want to bring something new into the world, you have to be willing to leave the campfire.
You have to be willing to sit in that tree time.
It makes me think of how we use technology to constantly plug the gaps. We are terrified of silence. We fill every second with a podcast or a text or a scroll through social media.
We do. You're trying to avoid the screaming in the thickets. We are trying to drown out the demons. But art demands that we put the phone down. It demands that we sit in the silence until the screaming stops and the singing begins.
You have to be willing to be bored, and you have to be willing to be alone. That's the challenge, isn't it? To stop viewing the loneliness as a symptom of something wrong.
And start viewing it as the necessary space for the work to happen.
Oh.
And there's one final provocative thought I'd like to leave you with.
Okay.
We talk about the artist being lonely, but think about why we consume art. Why do we read books? Why do we stare at paintings?
Usually, to feel less alone, to feel like someone else understands what we're going through.
Exactly. So perhaps the artist accepts this burden of loneliness, specifically to alleviate the loneliness of others. When you read a book, you are entering that solitude with the writer.
You are stepping into their tree time. You are meeting them in that quiet place.
So the work of art doesn't break the silence.
It makes the silence shareable.
Alone together. That's the magic trick. That is why it's worth it.
I think that is the perfect place to leave it. If you are out there creating something and you feel that isolation, remember, you are just traversing the geography. You're making the silence shareable. Thanks for diving in with us.
Thank